The ritual is rooted in fear of the ancestors' wrath. If we can prove that the ancestors do not demand this, the tradition will crumble, Nkechi explained. Adanma added, the diviner's shrine still stands in the forest, guarded by symbols of power. If we can destroy the shrine and expose the lies behind the ritual, we might be able to free the village. Eneojor's heart pounded. Then we'll do it. Together. The women clasped hands, their resolve solidifying under the moonlight. For the ones who came before us, Adanma whispered. For the ones who will come after, Nkechi added. For every woman who has suffered, Eneojor said, her voice firm. The pact was sealed, and the plan was set in motion. They would confront the lies that had chained their village for generations and fight to break the cycle of oppression. But as they parted ways, a shadow moved in the distance, unseen by the women. Someone had been watching, and the battle ahead would be more dangerous than they could have imagined. The night deepened, and the women parted ways, their resolve unshaken but their hearts heavy with the weight of what lay ahead. Unbeknownst to them, a figure lingered in the darkness, hidden behind the thick bushes near the stream. His face was partially illuminated by the moonlight, the younger son of the village priest. Emeka had overheard every word, his mind racing with the implications of what he'd just learned. The shrine, the truth behind the ritual, it was more than he had ever been told. He hurried back to his father's compound, his footsteps light but his heart pounding with a mix of fear and curiosity. Back at the compound, the chief priest, Eneojor, sat cross-legged in his hut, his hands tracing the intricate carvings of a wooden staff. The flickering firelight danced on his face, revealing eyes that held both cunning and weariness. Emeka entered hesitantly, his voice trembling. "Father, I heard something tonight," he began, his words cautious. Eneojor looked up sharply, his grip tightening on the staff. "What did you hear, boy?" Emeka hesitated but decided to speak. Obina's wife and some women, they spoke of destroying the shrine. They said the ritual was a lie, that it wasn't the ancestors who demanded it but you. For a moment, silence filled the room, thick and oppressive. Then Eneojor let out a low chuckle that quickly grew into a booming laugh. "They dare question the will of the ancestors," he sneered. "Fools! They know nothing." "But is it true?" Emeka pressed, his voice trembling. Did our ancestors ever demand such a thing?" Eneojor's laughter died, and his expression darkened. "Mind your tongue, boy. You speak of things you do not understand." But Emeka wasn't deterred. "I want to understand. Why must this ritual continue? Why must the women suffer? What are we protecting, really?" Eneojor's gaze turned icy. "You ask too many questions. Go to bed." Emeka opened his mouth to argue but thought better of it. He nodded and left the hut, but his curiosity had been ignited. He couldn't ignore the unease that gnawed at him. The next evening, Eneojor, Nkechi, and Adanma gathered in secret, armed with determination and a few tools to aid their mission. The shrine was located deep in the forest, a place shrouded in superstition and fear. The villagers rarely ventured there, believing it to be sacred ground protected by vengeful spirits. As they approached the shrine, Eneojor felt a chill run down her spine. The air seemed heavier here, the shadows darker. The shrine was small but imposing, adorned with symbols of the ancestors and offerings left by villagers seeking blessings. "This is it," Nkechi whispered. "The heart of the lie." Adanma handed Eneojor a small lantern. "We have to destroy it all, the carvings, the relics, everything. But we must be quick. If we are caught." She didn't finish her sentence, but the fear in her voice was enough. They walked swiftly, smashing the wooden idols and scattering the offerings. Eneojor found a hidden compartment beneath the central altar, and her heart raced as she pried it open. Inside was a bundle of old scrolls, yellowed with age. "What are these?" she asked, holding them up. Nkechi's eyes widened. "They look like records." Eneojor unrolled one of the scrolls, her hands trembling. The writing was faded but legible, and what she read made her blood run cold. The scrolls detailed the origins of the ritual, not as a command from the ancestors but as a selfish decree by the first chief priest. "It's all here," Eneojor whispered, her voice shaking. The ritual was never about the ancestors. The first priest, he created it because he wanted his son's bride for himself. He used the famine as an excuse to manipulate the villagers. Nkechi and Adanma stared at her in shock. "It says he claimed the ritual would bring prosperity, but in truth, he wanted to secure his family's power and wealth," Eneojor continued. "And they've kept it going ever since, passing it down through generations." Adanma clenched her fist. "So all this suffering, all this pain, it was for their greed." A rustling sound interrupted them, and they froze. From the shadows emerged Emeka, his face pale and conflicted. "What are you doing here?" Nkechi demanded, stepping protectively in front of Eneojor. "I followed you," Emeka admitted. "I had to know the truth." He gestured to the scrolls in Eneojor's hands. "Is it true? Did my father lie to us all?" Eneojor's eyes narrowed. "Why should I trust you?" "Because I want to help," Emeka said, his voice earnest. "I've questioned this ritual my whole life, but I was too afraid to speak. If what you found can prove the truth, I'll stand with you." Though hesitant, Eneojor decided to take a chance on Emeka. Together, they gathered the remaining scrolls and made their way back to the village under the cover of darkness. The next step was clear: they needed to expose the truth to the entire village. But they knew the chief priest wouldn't go down without a fight. As they plotted their next move, Eneojor felt a renewed sense of hope. For the first time, the weight of the ritual felt lighter, but the battle was far from over. Eneojor would not relinquish his power easily, and the revelation of his deceit would send shockwaves through the village. The storm was coming, and Eneojor was ready to face it head-on. The days leading up to their confrontation with the village were tense. Every moment felt charged with anticipation, as though the air itself held its breath. Eneojor, Nkechi, Adanma, and now Emeka had become a quiet force, unseen but determined. The scrolls they had uncovered had been carefully studied and copied, and with the weight of truth on their side, they planned to expose the lies that had oppressed generations of women. As the village gathered for the customary evening feast, where the chief priest often addressed the people, Eneojor stood at the edge of the crowd, her heart racing. She had never imagined that she would come to this moment, that she, a newlywed, would be the one to lead the charge against such a deeply ingrained tradition. Yet, the flames of justice burned fiercely within her. Emeka was at her side, his face a mix of determination and guilt. His decision to stand against his father, against the very foundation of his family's power, was not an easy one. Yet, the truth had called to him, and he could not ignore it. "Tonight, it ends," Eneojor whispered, her voice unwavering. The village square was alive with activity as families gathered around, sharing food and stories. The fire in the center of the square crackled and popped, its light illuminating the faces of the villagers. But among them, Eneojor's group stood apart, their eyes on the hut where Eneojor, the chief priest, was preparing to make his customary speech. Nkechi, Adanma, and Emeka kept watch as Eneojor moved toward the center, her posture regal and confident despite the fear that clawed at her insides. She could feel the weight of the scrolls in her hands, hidden beneath her simple shawl, their contents holding the truth that would change everything. As the chief priest stood to speak, the crowd fell silent. His presence was commanding, and even now, after everything Eneojor had learned, she couldn't deny the aura of power he exuded. "My people," Eneojor began, his voice booming. "We stand here today, bound by the ritual that has kept us prosperous. Our ancestors have blessed this tradition, and we will continue to honor it for the future of our village." The villagers cheered, their voices a chorus of reverence, but Eneojor's heart thundered in her chest. This was the moment when the truth would be revealed. Without warning, Eneojor stepped forward, her voice cutting through the noise of the crowd. "Chief Eneojor, I demand that you tell the truth." The crowd fell silent, their eyes turning to her. For a long moment, Eneojor's gaze held hers, his face a mask of anger and disbelief. "You dare speak to me like that, woman," his voice low and dangerous. "Who are you to question the will of the ancestors?" "I am Eneojor, the daughter-in-law you tried to control," she said boldly, stepping into the center of the square, her shoulders squared. "I am the voice of the many women you have deceived, the women whose lives you ruined to satisfy your own desires." A murmur spread through the crowd, a ripple of confusion and disbelief. Eneojor didn't flinch. She raised the scrolls in her hand and unfolded them, her voice strong as she read aloud. "Here is the truth," she began, her eyes scanning the words that would forever change the course of the village's future. "The ritual that has been passed down from generation to generation, that has cost women their dignity and their lives, was never a command from the ancestors. It was created by the first priest, your father, Eneojor, not to honor the spirits, but to satisfy his own desires. He wanted the bride of his son, and so he manipulated the villagers, using the false claim of ancestral will to justify his actions." The silence in the square was deafening. The crowd was frozen, their eyes wide, struggling to process the enormity of what Eneojor had just revealed. "No," Eneojor growled, stepping forward. "This is a lie. You are trying to destroy the foundation of our village. The ancestors will punish you for your insolence." But Eneojor stood firm. "The ancestors will not punish us for revealing the truth. They will punish us for perpetuating a lie. The suffering of the women, the pain of the generations before us, it ends now." Eneojor's face twisted in fury, and for a moment, Eneojor feared he would strike her down. But she held his gaze, undeterred. She had come too far to back down now. Before Eneojor could respond, a voice called out from the back of the crowd. "It is true, father." Everyone turned, their eyes widening in shock as Emeka stepped forward, his face pale but resolute. "I've known for years, but I was afraid. Afraid to speak out, afraid of what it would mean for our family," he said, his voice cracking. "But I can no longer stay silent. What my father did was wrong. The ritual was never about the ancestors, it was about his greed, his lust for power, and control over the women of this village." The villagers gasped, many of them glancing uneasily at each other. Eneojor's face twisted in rage, but the seed of doubt had been planted. Emeka's confession was the final blow to his father's credibility. "You would betray me, Emeka." Eneojor spat, his voice full of venom. "I am not betraying you, father," Emeka said quietly, his eyes filled with sorrow. "I am finally doing what is right. The women have suffered enough. This cycle of pain must end." The crowd began to murmur, some of them nodding in agreement. Eneojor could feel the tide shifting. The truth was taking root, and there was no stopping it now. Eneojor stood frozen, the weight of his family's secrets pressing down on him. The villagers no longer saw him as a powerful leader, but as a man consumed by his own desires. "Leave now, father," Emeka said, his voice firm. "The village no longer needs your lies." For a long moment, there was only silence. Then, without another word, Eneojor turned and walked away, his pride shattered, his power lost. As he disappeared into the night, Eneojor felt a sense of triumph surge within her. The battle was won. The village was free from the chains of the ritual. But even as the villagers began to celebrate, Eneojor knew the road ahead would not be easy. Change would take time, and there would be resistance. But for the first time, she felt hope. The future was theirs to shape.